All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Bastion Black Performance Podcast. Today we got my first ever having another person speak on this, and we've spent exactly the last 9 minutes trying to figure out how to make Skype work for that. So this will be fun. This will be a little bit of a work in progress on that. So today, who I've got with me is a friend of mine who's also my primary Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. Um, John Hansen. So John competes at very high level in submission wrestling, grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He'll be competing the ADCCs Abu Dhabi's this fall. He competed last time around. They had it. Was that 2020? Last time they had Abu Dhabi's?
2019.
2019. Okay, yeah, because it's like thrown off a year or something because of the Rona, right? But anyways, so John, obviously, so he won. You won the East Coast trials for that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Make sure I got my East and West right on that. But so John won the East Coast trials. So he'll be competing in Abu Dhabi. He's also competed and won at the world level in UWW, which is it's a grappling organization that falls or it's under the same umbrella that Freestyle and Greco is. So it's a very like wrestling heavy, but they compete in no gi and gi as well as being a black belt world champion, in the IBJJF and then other such things. So I brought John on today. So we're going to kind of talk about, so obviously like grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like fighting stuff is a major component of my life. And it's a major component of, just like the things that I teach and the things that I do. So I brought John on because obviously we train together a lot. We've known each other for a while now. And we get along, really well as far as having discussions on that. But I thought we go over a few topics about just kind of the state of grappling itself, and then grappling as it pertains to fighting, pertains to self-defense, and also kind of a little bit of like differences. So obviously, so John is when we talk about like, well, there's black belts and there's black belts. John is the latter, and I'm the former on that. And so then I kind of thought we'd also like sort of describe a little bit like the other thing that makes this kind of interesting is that like we're like diametrically opposite like body types and jujitsu types. So I kind of thought we'd just describe each other's jujitsu game. That way it doesn't come off as like too narcissistic, but that way you guys have a little bit of perspective. Like when we're talking about like, things that I see, things that we do or whatever, kind of know who it is that you're working with. So I guess I've been kind of rambling without letting John talk. Hi, John. Is there anything that you would like to say as we get rolling here?
Hi, Lane. I think I'll start by describing your style, because this is something I was thinking about.
Please describe it as aesthetically fantastic.
I was thinking about it when you were talking just there. I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said that like we have diametrically opposed styles, and half the time when we're training, if we're training aggressively and competitively with each other, what one of us does well is what is sure as heck to injure or at least bang up the other person.
You didn't cuss on my podcast. I'm not a librarian.
Oh yeah. Like what we do, what one of us does well, sure as shit, is probably the thing that is going to bang up the other one. And so you are basically a vice with limbs that is, I don't know, it's really interesting because when you got injured and you started playing on the bottom more, not only did your whole game improve, but your bottom game became, I think, the best part of your game. And that wasn't the case before you got injured. And now, like, it's way worse to fight you on the bottom than it is the top. Not to say that it's a pleasure to fight you on the top. I mean, if you're getting on the mat with Lane, you're in for a really rough time. But fighting you on the bottom from your half guard, I just can't believe how much it's grown. So I don't know if we'll talk about this at one point, but I do want to ask you what you think gave you so much growth in that department.
Well, I guess what I think the biggest thing was, and I don't recommend this as like a training methodology, but so when I tore both meniscuses, whatever, in my left knee in when did I do that? Oh, it was 2016. Yeah, it was like Thanksgiving. It was the day after Thanksgiving, 2016. That's what it was. And I had surgery in 2017, like February, and so I was was a blue belt, right? Yeah, I was a blue belt at the time, but I was still kind of very much in the like first trip through the buffet kind of like style, and at the time I'd been working a lot of like I was trying to work into like butterfly guard, and I was trying to work into like guard retention and guard recovery stuff that were kind of based around like feeding back in butterfly hooks and just that sort of thing. Um, and so then when I hurt my knee, so the problem I have is I hurt my back really bad on my second deployment, and so it caused a really bad like so the nerves don't function right in my left leg. So you can see like my left leg is like noticeably smaller than my right, and it doesn't function correctly. So like the superficial peroneal is the thing that's messed up. So like you see it sometimes with like fighters, like Henry Cejudo had. I'm trying to think of what fight it was, but he had that where like he got drop leg or like drop foot really bad, like his leg wasn't working. Like mine, it's not that bad all the time, but that's the same nerve basically that gets messed up with that. So when I came back from knee surgery, basically what I told myself is I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do any shin loading with my left leg whatsoever, and basically none with my right. So I don't do any butterfly guard. I don't do any single X. I don't do any half butterfly. I don't do any shin to shin, anything like that. And the only exception that I make, I suppose, for my right leg is when I kind of like come underneath for like my technical stand up sweep, where like a normal dude would go for X guard, but I basically it was something I picked up from a Jean-Jacques Machado video, like out of half guard. But so that's the only time I'll even like do any sort of loading like on my right knee because of that. And so it's definitely very limiting in some ways, probably in a lot of ways. But the one good thing was it was like it kind of just removed a whole bunch of things for me to even try to do. So it was like, hey, if you're not going to in any way put weight on a shin, pretty much all you can do is play half guard from the bottom, or I guess play open guard with like, wrist grips and stuff like that. But no,
Do
that's
you avoid
definitely
De La Riva as well, Ben?
no, actually I played De La Riva a decent amount. I actually like De La Riva. Um, it's pretty easy to wrestle up out of that.
Yeah.
So we got a smidge off track here, but so yeah. So if you had to describe my game, I guess I would say the way I would kind of describe it would be like I play a pretty compact game, but I have to play a lot of outside position with my legs. So like a lot of half guard, a lot of deep half, a lot of things like that. A lot of like hand control, wrist control. Would you say that's like accurate?
Yeah, I would say that is accurate. And do you want to talk to people what they mean by outside and inside position?
Yeah. So so like obviously inside position, what typically means. So like if like a guy is coming into my guard, so inside position would be having my feet, and i.e. my legs inside of his. So like your standard, butterfly, we're using butterfly to get to single X and things like that. So one of the reasons is that, now you get, one or two frames, like two shins, two knees in front of you to kind of help keep distance. Excuse me. But you also keep your feet inside, which helps protect you from, leg lock entries and things like that. Whereas like me playing outside, which means I typically play half guard and I'm right-handed. So more often than not, my right foot is in between when my left foot's out. So when I play a shield, which is primarily what I play, like half guard knee shield, is I have to play like very tight with my, with my left foot on the outside, but then also like I'm super active, like fighting the hands from there, lest a guy stand up and just basically fall back and start entering legs on me and things like that. Not that that doesn't still happen. But so then kind of, so if I like conversely, so if I describe sort of like, again, John and I are completely diametrically opposed. So like, I guess I should add to that. I'm like 5'10", 230. So like whenever you guys see me, like I put videos on my Instagram and stuff of like submissions and things, I just call it stubby jitsu. Because there's like a fair amount of like normal jujitsu stuff that I can't really do the normal way because I'm just like I'm an ultra heavyweight that's stuck in the size of a lightweight's body as far as limbs and stuff go. So it brings some specific advantages and some specific disadvantages. And then we take John. John's exactly the opposite. So John has what I would consider like like classic jujitsu body type. So you're what, 6'4"? If we ask your wife, you're 6'5". But like 250 pounds.
Yeah, it's 6'3". Yeah.
Whatever. John is over 6 feet tall. He's between 6 feet and 6'5". We'll say that. But also like very just like long limbed. But like the thing that's the weirdest is that like his hip and lower leg flexibility is on par with like a featherweight. Like and so what it allows him to play is a very inside position game, but like a really compact game. So like guys who do jujitsu, like this, like usually it's with small dudes where like they'll sit spine totally erect, both butt cheeks on the floor, both heels touching their anus, and both knees flat on the ground. Well, like John's like 6'4", 250 and can sit like that. So it's totally like a ridiculous set of, like physical attributes when it comes to that. Which makes it very difficult to approach from like a guard passing standpoint because you have to get so close to the person in order to be able to get grips. Whereas conversely, most big guys, most ultra heavyweights when they're playing, is they have to keep their legs somewhat more extended so you can kind of get inside of the foot, inside of the ankle, but still be kind of at the extended like range of the hand. So you can kind of start your passing stuff there. Whereas like the really flexible guys, you are well within the range of the hands and still haven't made it to the feet. And that's one of the things that I think is particularly difficult about little dudes. But then, normally, let me pull my list back up here. But normally with little dudes, you kind of have the compensation of like, okay, sucks, you're really flexible. And there's not a lot to do with that, but I'm big and smash. Conversely, but like with John, you have like the opposite. Someone who's also of substantial size. So you think, are you happy with that description of our relative jiu-jitsu games before we start answering or kind of talking points here?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think one of the things that you said the other day I hadn't considered until you said it, and it really struck home with me when you said that, like, especially in combat sports, if your body style is in some way that of an outlier, like that doesn't mean that it's going to. We know a lot of guys who have outlier body styles that, are shit on the ground or shit in fighting, but that's that can yield like a high level of success.
Well, and yeah, in our specific conversation about that, like what I brought up, and which is basically 99% true, which is you never find a single person in combat sports that are short and or of average or below average leg length at the upper reaches of any combat sport.
Jeff Hansen.
Well, and that's why I said 99%. The very rare few who are like the Orlando Sanchez's, the Jeff Monsons, like guys who are so thick and compact that they're just kind of naturally resistant to like the guillotine and triangle game. But they're still at a huge disadvantage when it comes to passing, and then especially things like back controls and stuff like that. Relative, like you watch like Orlando Sanchez, it's like that dude ain't playing closed guard and putting people in triangles and stuff like that. He's like get on top, super heavy, find something to squeeze, smash it until until he can try to make the corner, try to pass guard, something like that. Yeah. But you see it like you see him struggle with guys, and he's a far outlier just as far as like body, because what's he like 350? Like he's humongous. But you're talking with like Nicky Rod in their match last year, and Nicky Rod's like very young, very good physical condition, but you saw like dealing with like a long guy, it's hard to really get in close to be able to bash on the head and work the overhook underhook game where you can kind of tie into a guy if a guy wants to kind of keep you at distance. But again, I mean, we can basically we can find like two examples at that level of the sport looking back for like the last 30 years, and that tells you something about it, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But okay, so now that we kind of introduced ourselves and our relative relative attributes a little bit, so gonna kind of go, not really questions because it's just gonna be more of us just kind of like chatting, so kind of some points to talk about. So the first one is kind of ask John to start us off. So because you obviously compete much more than I do, especially now, but at a much higher level. So talk about the state of sport grappling as you see it currently. And so for the purposes of like my podcast, like I use the term grappling, submission wrestling, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu interchangeably and without regard to any particular rule set. What I mean when I say any one of those is people wrestling each other, but they're trying to choke each other and break shit. Like I'm not talking about, like, if I say BJJ, I'm not talking about specifically the IBJJF rules or whatever. So just because
like fighting without strikes.
Exactly. Yeah. So proceed. So talk about the state of sport grappling as you see it currently.
Well, I actually don't like where we're going right now. And maybe you can help maybe my answer will be not where you want me to go with it, and you can parameterize it a bit. But I don't like where we're seeing it going, in the sense that I don't like how, and I mean, like Flow's done wonders for the sport. I couldn't complain about them if I wanted to, but I don't like how, because of the success of Who's Number One and other like Fight to Win, how we've seen such a trend into sub-only formats. Because I just think that's I don't think that's the most dominant way to score a match. I don't think that like looks much like a fight. And I don't think it looks much like anything else. I mean, it doesn't look like it's a completely different sport. I think. I mean, other than the fact that you're still trying to kill each other without punching each other. So I guess I think that's the thing that I think that I'm most frustrated with right now is that I don't. I mean, like I like somebody.
So
Just
would you say the thing that you don't like about it would be the lack of like emphasis or weight towards positional dominance then?
Positional dominance, exactly. Yeah, that's I think what bothers me the most.
Yeah, and I'd concur with that. When you and I have had this conversation a bajillion times trying to figure out what we think the optimal rule set is. But no, and I think it's because the one problem that you see with all martial arts, if you guys can hear a siren in the background, it's outside of my house. But I think one of the problems that you have with all martial arts, and you've seen this with
know
judo.
They had sirens in Lanistan.
Well, we don't talk about what we do and don't have around here. But so one thing that you've seen, at like the Olympic level, it's because it's happened to judo, it's happened to taekwondo, is that they will make rule changes to make a sport more aesthetically pleasing or more entertaining for people that don't know anything about the sport. So, for example, not to go too far off track, but so one thing they did to judo like a decade ago, roughly speaking, is so in judo it used to be perfectly legal to just take a shot on the legs, single leg, double leg, ankle pick, whatever, like normal wrestling shots. So obviously judo, they're wearing the gi and stuff like that. So it used to be totally normal, and obviously it makes sense, that you could just take a shot from distance. Well, what they basically kind of decided, for lack, kind of like oversimplifying here, was that it looked too much like freestyle wrestling or too much like, freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling to people that didn't know any different. So then they basically made it illegal to shoot a shot on the legs. And that's why you've seen judo change to even more judo-y, where like, because you can only trip and throw. And obviously you're going for like touch falls, so going straight from feet to back and stuff in judo. And they did the same thing with taekwondo. And so taekwondo used to be like a fairly well-rounded like art. I think like in its like kind of original Korean forms, I think they still call it like Tang Sudo or whatever. But like, a fairly normal, very, very like reminded you a lot of like kind of traditional karate, very lots of punches, lots of kicks, elbows, normal stuff. But people couldn't tell the difference between it and karate. And so then they kind of changed up how they weight their scoring. I don't really know exactly how they do it, but they basically made it so that it's not worth it for the competitor to try to score points with punches. And so that's why you see the really exaggerated long stances and the exaggerated types of kicking attacks out of Taekwondo, is because they just essentially manipulated the scoring so that it's not worth it to try to get into punching range because you can't score the number of points that way. And then, back to like the original point, I think that's kind of what's happening with like, grappling with the sub only stuff is like most people don't know anything about wrestling related sports. So like seeing a dude take a guy down, just grind him into the mat and score no points for 5 minutes, but just absolutely dominate a guy is not appealing to people. They want to see like all of these sub attempts and positional changes and stuff. And so they basically change the rules to kind of accomplish that, I suppose. Would you think that's roughly the way to describe it, or?
I think you're right. I just think it's also interesting because so when I first started watching MMA, I was watching Pride and I was really like taken in by like Nogueira and Ricardo Arona. And like I was like, man, and Ricardo Arona, when he fought MMA, I mean, he was so freaking dominant, but he was quite boring almost all of the time. He had such a dominant top game, not as a wrestler, as a submission grappler, that he could get on top and then just never let anybody do anything. Like that was just the end of it. And I was just blown away by it. And, watching and it was at a higher level the grappling was than it was in the UFC currently. And then I remember watching John Fitch when he came around and everybody hated him because he was so boring. And I just thought it was, I loved watching it. So I've always liked watching positional dominance because nobody could get out from underneath him and really do anything. And to me, that's really entertaining to watch. But I understand where if you're not like super like locked into grappling itself, where it might be more boring or harder to follow or harder to understand. I wish there would be somebody that would come out and say, hey, you know what, like if you score a certain amount of points, like you put 30 points on a guy, we're going to count that like as legitimate as a submission. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know why there's not like a tech fall rule. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's, it's kind of one of the things like, I think that combat jiu-jitsu is trying to accomplish is, because combat jiu-jitsu, you can open hand strike.
Yeah.
And so you see, like, as soon as you do that, guys immediately start playing closed guard again. Like,
Yep.
like funny how that works,
Yep.
but one of the problems with that is that now you're adding the strikes in. So now you add the concussive, damage potential stuff to
Totally.
it. So I suppose, I mean, open hand strikes are still absolutely effective. Like no question about that. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely on board the massive control, train of things. Because I mean, that's like wrestling basics, which is like, hey, first be in charge of position, second cause damage, three finish if you can finish. But it's definitely something that most people don't understand, especially if they don't do it or have never done it. They don't until you like as soon as you've been under somebody who you could never get out from, no matter how hard you try, then you're like, oh, okay, like now it starts to make sense why just having an awfully good top ride and never letting a dude, turn and face you or get back to his feet or anything would be a good idea. But most people don't. Most people don't grasp that. I think.
Well,
Even a lot
I
of
also
jiu-jitsu
think like,
people now, I think fundamentally, because it's like, I guess you could say, technically speaking, one thing that's interesting about like submission grappling is that like if you don't submit a guy, technically he could be dangerous right up until the whistle.
right.
You could always roll over and grab your foot or put you in a guillotine or whatever. Like it could technically always happen, even if like there's times you're like dominating or getting dominated. And you're like, yeah, there's a 0% chance I'm going to finish you with any of this. But I think that's kind of one of the changes. Whereas like conversely, like in wrestling, it's like you have like 12 points and there's 10 seconds left. There is a 0% chance that you lose. Well, one, you just run away. But
Yeah.
yeah, like the dude would have to pin you somehow.
Well, I guess the thing I think about is like you've sparred countless rounds. There is nothing, at least that I've ever experienced, that's more dominating than a guy who just that you can't stop. Like he gets on top, he's past the guard. You have nothing that you can do for him. He could do whatever he wanted to you. You can't move. You can't. Every place you go, he's ahead. Like that's way more dominant than a guy who just catches your arm and shoulder locks it. You know what I mean? And to me, it's
Yeah.
like I don't think there's enough credit put in that because it's like, man, like everybody can get caught in a guillotine, get caught in a whatever. That doesn't mean the guy isn't good. But stuff happens when you're scrambling. However, to consistently beat somebody over and over and over again, like in transition after transition, like to me, that is way more dominant and it's much more fun to watch for me. Okay, cool. You caught the guy. You know what I mean? Like that's way different than, man, he just keeps winning that exchange, keeps winning those pummel battles. That's just a different level.
Well, and in my head, it's kind of one of the ways like I switched my own thinking around. I mean, some of it again is to compensate for like, bodily related strength and weaknesses that I have. I mean, everybody has their own. Is like in the back of my head, I've kind of gotten, one, I've been, teaching like some more classes and I've been trying to stay in touch with like the practical side of things. I think part of it's because like one, I'm a person who just I respect like dominance. Like I think most of the time I would rather go out and dominate a guy and win 2-0 than I would if I went out and just Kimura a dude in 30 seconds. Like I would feel more accomplished because like guys who do the sport, like how much more work you had to put into it and how much
Totally.
like less that he was in the match if I just rolled him for 5 straight minutes. But then I also try to keep in my head, it's like, man, in real life, like people hit you, so it's like,
Yep.
I try to keep in mind that it's like anytime I'm in side control and the guy is being, kind of static, I could be kneeing him in the ribs, I could be kneeing him in the face. I mean, if it's, I don't know, if I'm like fighting for my life, would I poke your ass in the eyes, break your fingers, whatever, or especially like turtle, like the turtle is like a perfectly fine position in jiu-jitsu, but in real life, turtle is the single worst place that you could ever possibly be.
Absolutely.
Like you cannot, there are no attacks from turtle, I guess, unless you count like the kamikaze, rolling arm bar or the rolling knee bar. But it's like realistically, like you get there and like now a dude just gonna be kneeing your ribs, a la George St. Pierre versus Matt Serra 2. And then in professional mixed martial arts, you can be punching, the side of the head and stuff. But I mean, if it's not a sanctioned fight, like dude's gonna be elbowing you, kicking you in the back of the head, whatever. Like it is a very bad position. So I've been trying to like kind of keep myself more, like also more in tune with that is like, hey, like understand that like turtle can be a perfectly useful position if it's very transitory. Like use it to get immediately back to a guard or get to it up, hand control, stand up, get out. But like it is not like in jiu-jitsu, especially someone like you or like Anthony Smith, you know, when he was training with us still, is like guys who are so flexible that like you'll put your taint on the floor in turtle with your knees like spread out at like 180 degrees. It's like, what am I supposed to do to this? Like jiu-jitsu wise, there's nowhere to put anything, you know, like, yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. It's one of the reasons why, like, as for what problems I have with certain organizations, like, I don't, like, at the end of the day, I don't have anything fundamentally wrong with the IBJJF or the UWW or the ADCC, because they all reward positional dominance and continuing to like improve position. But like when you're talking about sub only, it's like, okay, cool. I can, if I get to turtle and I know that like there's a minute left or that you won't, I'm good enough at defending this, like, that you can just hang out there and know that, you know what, if I was good in the first half of the match, I'll probably just win the decision here. Or if I had more submission attempts, I'll just, you know, win the submission here, or I'll win the decision here. Like I just, I don't like it, but
Yeah,
you know,
I'm the same because it's like, and I mean, I think positionally the IBJJF probably has the best rule set, maybe UWW, but
well,
because at least I think that the IBJJF for the most part rewards positions that are fight related. But one of my problems with them is that they don't penalize the turtle.
I'm
And so
interested.
guys who are not real serious jujitsu guys, so the turtle is like basically when you're on your elbows and knees. Like so in the IBJJF scoring system, like if I go to pass your guard, but during the process you immediately roll to your hands and knees or to your elbows and knees, I don't get any points for it. They give me an advantage, which is basically like an attaboy. So if we get to the end of the match and we're tied and I have an attaboy and you don't, like I win. But it's like you know, the fact that you don't get points for that, I feel like is really like wrong. But
Well, and like, so that's my thing. I think there's something that can be taken from all of them. I'm really interested to see how the U.S. Open goes for the ADCC this year, and the reason I say that is because I think when it comes to the elite level of grappling, that there's no better rule set than the ADCC. But I don't know if that's the case if it's at a sub elite level, and the reason I say that is because the nuances that it takes to mitigate a score. You're probably only going to see when you've got two really high level guys, which is what makes the rule set so interesting in terms of like how to mitigate a takedown by going to turtle and whatnot. But if you're at like a sub elite level, I don't think that either competitor is probably good enough to be able to use those rules to their advantage. And then I think it turns more into just looking like an IBJJF match.
yeah, and it's you and I have talked about it. Like I mean, I like the Abu Dhabis for like what it is as far as like it's very wrestling heavy, which is cool. But I fundamentally I don't like the organizations that like have any sort of like non-points scoring period of the match because I guess I don't like stuff like that because one thing I like about combat sports and then combat in general is that you can be of any um, you know predilection or any you know body you know, like biological like type as far as like explosive, you know, or type
Mhm.
one like non-explosive or whatever. But you have the fundamental like conundrum, which is if you're a really explosive guy, you score a bunch of points, you cause a bunch of damage early, and either finish the fight, finish the match, or so that the guy is unable to score enough points later on, or he's suffered enough damage that as your conditioning starts to suffer because being an explosive guy, you know, that's just how
Yep.
it works, that you can stay ahead. Conversely, if you're like a super high endurance, you know, if you're like a Nick and Nate Diaz guy who doesn't cause very much damage, but who just like picks and pecks for a whole, like you have to be able to not get so fucked up in the first 3 minutes that you can't come back the rest of it. And I like that fundamental like side of things, you know, but like the one thing I don't like about like the types of like venues or the types of organizations that don't allow points early is it's like it kind of rewards the more endurance focused guys, you know, because like, you know, at the high level, your Nicky Rod, your Muhammad Ali's, your really explosive guys are super dangerous early, you know.
Yep.
But it's like, you know, now, I mean, they can still get a takedown and they can still control you for the rest of the 5 minutes and then try to score points after that, but there's much less incentive. And so you see the way the guys approach the match is way different than the approach like IBJJF match or something like that. Like they kind of like pick at each other and like, oh, maybe I'll just kind of like do some of this, but nobody takes any like substantial positional risk until there's points, and then guys push it.
I think I tend to disagree a little bit in that regard. And where my disagreement comes in is if you're a guy who knows that he can't win the top position via the wrestling match, so he concedes and pulls guard. So if you're me, one of the greatest benefits to that rule set is that on bottom that, hey, you know what? Like if like in most no-gi, the person on top is better, is in a better position. Especially because you can't create as much leverage.
I tried to put that under my desk to open it, and it was way louder than if I hadn't put it under there. Sorry,
you can't. No, you're right. You can't create the leverage on the bottom like you could in gi because you don't have a person's kimono to grab their jacket, right? And so the person on top has a substantial advantage in no gi. And so I think one of the things that's really like attractive to the ADCC style is that you can come out really aggressive from the bottom position without points being scored. And if the guy happens to beat you in the transition, pass the guard and whatnot, like you don't have to worry about losing that. So you can spam that wrestle up or that sweep over and over and over again that first 5 minutes, trying to get to the top position before the score happens, knowing that you're going to be in the better position once the points start accruing to be able to score. And that's one of the things I don't think you see in the IBJJF because of that, where I think guys are much more passive throughout on the bottom and much more reactionary on the bottom throughout, whereas you see guys much more aggressive from the bottom in the ADCC during the first half of the match, because they know that if they miss, they're not going to like give up a score, so they can keep being aggressive. And that's just I think that's I think it's why you see like matches where the action happens the way it does in ADCC.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a facet of that. So I'm gonna try to move us along here because we sort of combined the first two. We talked about that for a long time. So, all right. So what trends do you see as helpful, and what trends do you see as harmful for the legitimate application of fight violence? In both the sport side of things and the self-defense, like sort of legitimate side of things. So I guess maybe I'll even trim that down and say fuck the sport side of things, because we've talked about that an awful lot. So what trends do you see as helpful, and what trends do you see as harmful for the legitimate application of real life violence or self-defense, self-preservation related violence right now?
I'll tell you, I think one of the things that, and this is, I think it's a constant in grappling, I think you'll agree with me on this too, is if you're trying to train to like be able to defend yourself, you've got to spend time in the jacket. You have to spend time in the gi, because not only is it completely overwhelming if you've never been in a gi before and somebody starts grabbing on your lapel, grabbing on your skirt, grabbing on your pants, something like that. But at the same time, those reactions that you build and learning how to deal with that, those leverage points, are going to give you so much leverage in a real fight. If somebody's trying to aggress you and you get a hold of their belt, or you get a hold of their zipper, their not their beanbag zipper, but like their jacket, and all of a sudden like the torso. I mean, that one works too. Now
no, I think I agree with you on that. Like, and I brought this up in like other videos I've done, like on my Facebook channel and stuff like that. Is like, because like, I mean, the realm of real life violence takes place somewhere between the gi and no gi. Like, you're pretty much never going to fight somebody where you're both shirtless, pantless, shoeless, sockless, and only in spandex underwear.
That's true.
But conversely, the chances of us both being in a very thick, heavy cotton robe with lapels that are made specifically big for choking each other is also pretty much zero. But absolutely, like dudes in pants with belt, like collared shirts, or button-up shirts, or just even t-shirts. Like, just like life happens somewhere in between that. And one thing that I brought up, which is kind of along the lines of what you were saying, is that like one thing I think the gi is so important for, aside from the obvious thing of just like, you kind of have to really like tune up your defenses and your escapes and stuff, because the guy has so many things to grab and use to control you or finish you. But it's also like you have to get comfortable with like a dude grabbing your shit all the time, and that sucks at first. But you know, like I think back to like pretty much any like street fight or like fight when I was bouncing or whatever is like once dudes get locked in, like they're grabbing your t-shirt, they're, you know, you get your hands stuck in each other's shirts, they're grabbing hair, like, you know, they're grabbing the hood, like whatever, you know, like they're pretty much always grabbing you. And so it's like one, I mean, obviously like being able to clear grips and stuff is useful, but also like just like being accustomed to somebody grabbing your stuff and being stuck there, I think is absolutely huge. Cause it can be, I mean, it kind of sucks, you know, because there's the part of you that's like wants to just like make space and throw big haymakers or something like that. But you know, you're kind of like stuck in there. So being able to like fundamentally deal with that, I think is big. But there's also plenty of like actual gi things that work in certain clothes. Like you brought up grabbing the belt, and I teach that like in my classes, like
Mhm.
specifically, like especially when I'm doing the underhook or when I'm doing phone call busy. Especially when I'm doing the underhook and or the arm drag and stuff like that.
Well,
Um,
dude, I think when you and I were playing shoot years ago, like when you were first starting teaching classes, we were playing around with grabbing the holster, and that's why we started grabbing the skirt in the first place, by just seeing how much leverage we had out of grabbing someone's holster attached to a belt. And that's like one of the best leverage points you can get in the gi. You know, I think like that it's interesting because that grip in the gi came off of, you know, you and I dicking around trying to figure out like where good leverage points were. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think it's good, and it's things I've kind of modified myself. Like I guess I don't use the skirt grip as much. Um, I grab the belt a lot in the gi, and then like when I'm teaching my class or doing participating in classes or whatever,
Mhm.
like I really like grabbing the belt because then I like being able to like put my hip to the hip. Because like one of my fundamental problems being a short dude, especially relative to like weight class, is that like for me underhooks don't work really well if I have them up high because I'm not a tall guy. So it's like if I get an underhook, if I can like duck or attack right away, it's fine. But if I'm going to be in some sort of like long drawn out, you know, kind of fight from like the high underhook, I don't get very much out of it just because like I'm too short to put most guys off balance with that. Conversely, if I drop down, grab that belt and pull the hips real tight, like I'm pretty good from there because
Oh
I'm good
yeah.
at keeping a guy tight and then stepping in front and you know I like to go like little trip or little you know kind of like hip over on that. And then I like that a lot when I started teaching, because one of the things I'll have guys do then is like, because I always have like a wall or a car or a barrier of some sort of part of class, is I'll tell guys when they go to that low underhook, so say around the belt or around the waistline, and
Mhm.
then I'll tell them to take the same side leg and step in front and then pop their hip into the guy's pelvis and then pin them up against the thing they're using. And this was something I kind of picked up watching like Khabib. Um, is because like one thing and like and you know like especially when we still used to have Scott you know teaching the gym with us as well is like he'd have us working with the MMA guys over there and so like I remember one day specifically like I didn't get a train at all he just said hey go with who was it oh it's Cassius he's like hey uh just go over with Cassius put him against the wall and try to take him down I was like okay this is what I'm doing today but and I was kind of doing what everyone does, which is like, you know, I had a single leg and then try to reach across and grab the double leg. And it's just really freaking hard to take a dude down that way. But one thing they watched, like the Khabib so good, is he uses a single leg to push a guy up against the wall. And he doesn't try to stay outside to finish. He specifically steps in and splits to finish. And
Yeah.
that changed the shit out of everything that I do when it comes to like barriers, but also of using the belt in that like low underhook is because now the guy gets kind of like loaded up, but now you have the option to both kind of go inside trip and pull his foot back away from the wall and stuff. Or I like to go from there and one, you can just keep the belt, or you could go body lock off of that, and I'll basically just bend him over that hip that's there. And I don't even really throw because I try not to be explosive anymore. I just grind him around my hip and put him down. And like that was like I really like that a lot.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting how I was thinking about this when you were talking about how like guys that we know who have fought um, outside of like a controlled environment. Security. Sorry about that. Guys we know that have fought outside of controlled environment. Um, they have. It's interesting how their grappling style mimics their fight style. In the sense that like you know how Donahoe is, and like when Donahoe grapples, he's very similar to how he Thai boxes. He cuts off the ring, he squares up to you, he gets he doesn't stay on the outside try to snap you down at all. He gets his hips into yours and he uses like the tools that he has. Whereas with you, I could definitely see how you would like get compact, get inside, stab the person or tip them down. Or with me, most of the things that I do to control a guy are all keeping on the outside of his elbow, keeping on the outside of his shoulder, and manipulating a person that way. And I mean, obviously, I guess it makes sense because grappling is also combat, but it's interesting to see those carryovers, into actual fighting.
No, I think that's accurate, and it's one of the reasons why. So kind of the way that we run practice right now, for the most part, at least on like Tuesday, Thursdays when we do gi, because those are the days that I go for people that are listening. Is so usually I run the warm up stuff, and so I usually start off with like 8 or 10 minutes of like just hand fighting. We kind of do like Greco rules, which is like no shots. We don't actually throw each other. We mostly just do like really hard, like hand fighting, head fighting stuff. Like one. I kind of implemented that just because we used to always start off with like one of our passing drills, which is basically live rolling. So it's like dudes would just start off with like 30 minutes of live rolling with no fucking warm up. And so it's like, yeah, this is kind of a little bit much. So there's a way to sort of like work into it a smidge. But also just to like really like hyper emphasize hand fighting, because hand fighting, and conversely, like the footwork and the head fighting position is like absolutely foundational to, I mean, every type of combat, or combat sport, I mean, grappling, boxing, kickboxing, everything is about having active hands and active feet at the same time, regardless of what you're talking about. But then also, kind of like using that to, also work like the stuff that I like to do from like a self-defense standpoint. So one, I can kind of like play around with things and also like hyper emphasize that. But then, and then like kind of the selfish part of it, like for me, as far as running it is, like I don't really wrestle a lot on the feet anymore because man, it just freaking beats me up so much. And so I like, so I hate it, which is one of the reasons why I started playing guard so much. Is it's way easier to just sit down, grab a guy's leg, and then stand up and wrestle than it is to like take a shot on the feet. But I was kind of thinking, it's like one thing that I struggle with is it's like I want to be able to walk anyone down that's in the room. So it's like, okay, to be able to do that, like you got to be able to like hand fight, like just phenomenally, is like, I want to be a person that can stand in front of anybody in the room and be at any distance I choose to be because they can't choose to get away from it. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to spam, like overemphasize the hand fight stuff. I think for us, like it works well because then the guys they usually start off a little slow and they kind of pick it up by the end. If they're going like really slow at the end, I might kind of like get on them about that. But then we usually do some sort of like introduce a grip and nothing like really fancy. Usually it's like I spent a couple weeks like just doing a whole bunch of basic underhook stuff, basic overhook stuff, whatever. Then we'll do some sort of positional sparring or whatever. Then John comes out and teaches some sort of technique for the day, and then we'll drill that and then roll and things like that. But it's definitely like I've liked like really playing with the hand fighting stuff there because I think like guys who do the weapons related stuff with me, kind of like realizes that like especially when you add the barriers, which is a very big part of my class, is that like in real life has a lot of shit in the way, which is one of the reasons why I do it, is that it's like one, like the wall is absolutely a weapon, both offensively and defensively, if you know how to use it. But it can really stifle a lot of your basic grappling if you're not like good at using it or haven't made some slight modifications to stuff, because it is very difficult to take a guy down against the wall who knows how to use it because he can really sit against the wall. But conversely, like man, like I can get a lot of back attacks from like the arm drags and the 2-on-1s and stuff that would be really difficult or impossible to finish like out in space, but like with the wall. And then when now you add the weapons component, both denying them their weapon and also accessing mine, is like that shit's been huge. So I would say like that's to the initial point on that of like legitimate applications of like sport related violence to like real life violence. I think like for me, like the super emphasis on hand fighting has been really beneficial.
I remember another thing that I watched a use of force incident that you had a while back, and not to get into work or anything, and when you prone the guy out, you ended up using your pummels to keep the guy down. And it's like
the collar snap down guy. Yeah, the old gi snap down with that guy's button up shirt worked like a charm. But
the pummels afterwards. I mean, it's interesting because it used significantly less force than anything else you would have needed to use to control a person. And so it's one of the things I think that in terms of sport, like also works if you're ever in a situation where you have to control somebody. One of the practical applications of grappling, I think, is not just in achieving, positional dominance and control, is doing it with the least amount of force necessary. So that means like, I don't not necessarily the least amount of effort, but the least amount of force often means with significantly less effort. And so in a match, that might be just like so you can conserve energy. But like in the real world, it also means not like elevating that use of force continuum. That means keeping the guy, keeping yourself like at soft, empty hands or something like that, which really cuts down on any liability.
Saving energy, like in a legit self-defense encounter, is a good idea as well. Mm-hmm. No, and it's funny because like I usually tell this example like when I'm in class. This has been, I think it was 2014, but so one thing I bring up to people is that like aside from like maybe the two people who are going to be involved in the quote unquote fight, like most fights end before they happen when somebody knows what they're doing. And it's simply because like they'll make a positional change or the way they stand or something like that. So it's like other people on the outside don't even know that there was quote unquote a fight or going to be a fight, but like you basically achieve a position of like positional dominance to the point where like it just never happens. And I had like it was a really funny example. So I was out for New Year's Eve. I think it was 2014. So we're in Sioux City. We had gone to like the Hard Rock Cafe to try to play roulette. Little did we know that like you cannot play roulette there because there's too many people. So we went to this bar around the corner, and it was a super packed little bar. And so the way they had the bar itself in the bar set up, there was only one place that you could go to like get in line to get a beer. And so the line was kind of long. So I'm in line with like my two other friends that were there. And like right in front of us, I mean, maybe not the person right in front of us, but like right in front of us, there was a dude who was like my size, like normal sized guy who was like yelling at and like trying to like physically like bully like dude who was like, if this guy wasn't like an actual midget or a dwarf or a little person or whatever the medically correct fucking term is, he was like 1 inch taller than that. He was a fucking little dude. But so one, it's pissing me off because like this is the only way that we can get up to the bar to get a drink. And like they're messing with the line, and then two, I'm just like, I don't like fundamental like bully behavior, especially if you're gonna try to bully someone. It's like trying to bully a freaking dude with cerebral palsy or whatever. It's like pick somebody like who's a real person, like. But so I remember I just went up to the dude and I just kind of grabbed him by the back of the shirt and like tossed him, like fucking flung him way across the floor. And I mean, still on his feet, just like shoved him across the floor. And I just got in line and I just looked straight ahead like nothing had happened. And I was like, maybe he'll just get the hint and just not come back. When I look out of the corner of my eye, he comes charging over, like he like comes marching over, and he's kind of got his hands like sort of right in front of him. And as he kind of like gets close enough that I can touch him, I just reach over and I grab him by both wrists. And he had like a flannel shirt on. I grab him by both wrists, clamp down, and he made like one like really concerted motion to take his hands free, and he couldn't get him free. I just let go of his hands and looked at him for a second, and he just walked in the back of the line and nothing happened. So it's like we got in a fight, but like the fight never happened because I so dominated hand position that he couldn't do anything. He couldn't punch me, and he realized it's like, all right, I guess
he did the risk assessment calculation.
Like that, it's like
not worth it.
But like I always tell that one because it's really funny because there was nobody got hurt. There wasn't any real violence, but it was like literally like just good risk controls basically won me a fight that I didn't have to start. At that one. But no, and so I think that's phone died here again. Pull my points back up, but so I think that's kind of keeping with the legitimate side of things. And you and I have talked a lot about the wrestling, or the positional dominance thing. And so for me, I think the wrestling side of things and the top control, which is why you always kind of make fun of it. So I've become like a big fan of like a lot of catch wrestling related things lately. Just because like I like some of the idea of that where it's like, man, like maintain top dominant position at all costs, and then just work on like wearing on a dude, if you can. So I think those are kind of like applications, from the sports side of things that, especially like if you go with like a good folk style wrestler or somebody, it's like, and you see this, like, I mean, we both went to University of Iowa, but like, you see this at like college where like, guy like fights a good wrestler, doesn't really know what he's doing, but the guy basically gets behind him, picks him up, throws him down, picks him up, throws him down, picks him up, throws him down. It's like, you know, you don't even have to punch a dude in that. It's just like there's so much positional dominance. It's like, oh, okay, fight's
Yeah.
over, you know. Like, but
Well, I say,
okay, let's. Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I do think that the if you had to pick one characteristic of fighting, so you've got striking, you've got grappling of some sorts, and then you got wrestling. And I would say that, like, you're talking about grappling is anything on the ground, and maybe it's on the feet as well, but wrestling is legitimately the ability to control the transition and where the fight takes place. Far and away,
I think wrestling is the most dominant of all of them. Like
100%,
because
far and away.
well, and you and I had talked about this. It's one of the things I think that makes like Nick Rodriguez like, you know, like really smart in this regard is that he's one of the first like wrestlers who has figured out or has decided that like the best way to do jujitsu is to not do jujitsu with people, right? It's like he does lots of snap downs, takedowns, work stuff like that. You know, it's not that he can't pass or you know or anything like that, but it's like just use your wrestling to not have to do any jujitsu, right? And now as soon as the guy like pulls guard, he's probably gonna have to pull guard to an open guard, which means that you can try the like knee cuts from distance and cartwheel passing and you know, and otherwise like passing on the feet and shit like that, you know, and that's where I think like wrestling is like has the advantage because like, you know, a lot of guys they get too wrapped up in trying to like win whatever part of the fight or the sport or whatever the other guy is trying to do, which is like, man, use your wrestling to just not be anywhere near the guy if you don't want to be. And it's like, what's he gonna do? Like if he's not a good wrestler, he's not gonna do shit about it, you know?
I do know. I actually think that it's interesting because what's so fascinating about Nicky is that he wants to always stay ahead in the scramble, and if he can't stay ahead in the position, he just turns the scramble on. And I think that's not wrong. That's like the most right.
No, and that's I think absolutely. And this is where I don't intend to like compare myself, but I think developmentally, it's one of the things that held me back when I started in college was like I was a really fit guy and I'm the sweatiest human who's ever existed. Um, and so when I started to get into jiu-jitsu and wrestling and stuff like that, is like that was basically my approach. And man, it like blue belt, purple belt, like type of dudes or whatever, like if they're not already a wrestler, they can't really do anything to you in no-gi anyways.
Well,
You know, because there's not much to grab. And then if you intend to only pass them, pardon me, by knee cutting or just, you know, doing like little like leg drag and, you know, kind of X pass sort of stuff like that. And it's like if they don't want to get back up on their feet, like they basically are resigning themselves to having to find some way to finish me from the bottom. And that's hard to do, especially at like blue belt, purple belt level with somebody who's like physically superior to you.
totally.
Now, conversely, I think it really held me back because once I got old and super injured, it turns out that I didn't actually learn a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu in that time period. So,
But that's the thing, man, is like as if your chassis is healthy and your engine is good, like, and let's assume that if you're an elite level athlete, that both of those things are the case. You know what I mean? Then that's you're not going to take a guy who's a great wrestler and just try to teach him how to do the closed guard. I mean, you could, but you're really going to waste his talent. Conversely, you're not going to take a guy who's great at grappling and give him an elite level of wrestling ever. So if you want a guy to compete in grappling, you know, you're going to have a really awesome skill set in wrestling that you can add, you know, submission awareness here, positional dominance here, you know, control, ability to control there, and have a really powerful and interesting grappler. I think that's like where the sport should probably go, is elite level wrestlers coming over to grappling, learning how to defend and neutralize grappling. I think that's going to be way more beneficial and it's going to completely take the wrestling game out of grappling because you're not going to take an elite level grappler and teach them how to wrestle. They're never going to wrestle at that level. Wrestling is so parameterized, especially going from feet to mat over so many years. Like, can you imagine the amount of specific focus you would have to be able to like generate that mat time back? You'll never have it.
You know I think that's a good point. And that actually kind of leads me into my next talking point, which was what direction do you think offers the most ROI, the most return on investment for someone getting into grappling for the self-defense or for the fighting ability? And I think we just touched on it there, which is, um, I think basic wrestling, which again, like not to try to like tout my own, like my 1 day classes, that's basically all I do is like basic wrestling stuff on the feet, posting, circling, fighting the hands, underhook, overhook, arm drag, 2-on-1, pretty much that stuff. Cause like all of those things are the ability to control and manipulate distance. Um, it's what I always tell people is like, you have active hands, active feet, you can solve an awful lot of freaking problems. Um, and so like, from my opinion on it is like, get somebody in who, and teach them a lot of really good fundamental, like just positional awareness, hand fighting stuff on the feet, things like that.
Mhm.
And I think like from the bottom, like some basic wrestle up stuff, I think would probably be my, if I had to like pick a guard, would be like, kind of basic open guard related things or half guard related things that are like are, meant to get you right into like wrestling up or getting back to the feet. I think, well, we've kind of been talking about this in class like a little bit lately, but it's also like make the guy have to work to keep you down. And I bring this up a lot to guys because like for me, like I'm a collar drag guy. Like I really like to, I don't really want to be on my feet most of the time, but like I'll get that cross collar, work my way back to stand up just to draw the guy in on that pressure so I can collar drag the shit out of him. And that's such a good way, to really make a dude work, but to have to stay honest, which is to be constantly trying to just get back on your feet. I mean, one, I think in like a real life example is like get on your feet, you can cut the hands loose, fucking run your ass away or run far enough until you can get your gun out or your knife out or whatever it is. But I think also conversely in jiu-jitsu, it's like, I think too often once we get put in like a position where we have to like play guard, we're like, all right, cool, time to play guard. I guess I'll do the guard thing. Whereas now, I mean, now granted, points might come into it, but like, whereas like if you pull guard or whatever, and the dude's being kind of lazy with you, it's just like, man, just come back up to your feet, make him engage with you, because then it opens up a lot of things off of that. It's like, what do you think? Like, back to the original question, like what direction do you think offers the most ROI for someone getting into
So,
grappling for self defense?
sorry, it's interesting. I think that like I would want anybody who got into grappling for self defense, quote unquote, is somebody who has to be able to get into grappling to be able to compete in grappling. And the reason I say that is because that's where you get the most bang for your buck in terms of live goes, which is the closest simulation you can have to a fight. I don't care what you want to do with like a red man suit or anything like that. Like the closest simulation you can get is an agreed upon rule set where I'm trying to kill you and you're trying to kill me. Like, and the so being able to be conditioned to live goes to be able to win in a grappling match helps a lot with that. But now that's established, I would say that after a guy's got some sort of fundamental knowledge or education in the sport, like where the positions are, what you're supposed to do and whatnot. Like if he took 6 months of our fundamentals class, I am probably not wanting to teach him how to, if he's got normal amounts of flexibility or more, how to play off his back ever. Like from the guard, I want to teach the guy how to play from sitting up and from wrestling up, and then how to control on top, and then how to either take the guy down if he's got an aptitude for it, or go to the mat to be able to take the guy down, wrestling up, or how to like hand fight in using your Greco and then tip the guy. I have very little because I don't. So the reason I say that is because from the return of investment, I don't see in 5 to 10 years guys playing a lot of the guards that they're playing right now. Period. I think a lot of that gets shut down by guys with great hips and have got really good wrestling bases that know how to defend against the guard. And once you go to the flat of your back, the chance that you get up off the flat of your back, off the small of your back, is very low. So I think teaching a guy how to wrestle up and stay up and get up is probably, about the most important thing that you can use, other than if you just get smashed on the mat and you've got to figure out how to get to closed guard, how to control this guy from like laying hands on you, and then how to work from there. But outside of that situation where you're really far behind, I would say being able to get up, get on top, and then just dominate them with it's interesting to me because I learned, I would say most of my upbringing in the sport was non-traditional, but I I wrestled for several years when I was younger. I was very poor at it. I learned all the control points I learned on top were jiu-jitsu control points. But now I don't use any of them. I only use basically folk style controls with, I shouldn't say any. Rarely I'll use a jiu-jitsu thing here or there, but folk style controls with pins and rides, and but just using them in a jiu-jitsu context where like I don't have to drive the guy to his back. He can go to his back, so like off the claw, for instance, at a turtle. Because I can lock my hands, I just drive with the claw. I don't have to pull with it. If the guy decides to like get out or try to Grammy me, I just lock my hands together. He's not going anywhere. And so I think using like cheating wrestling, being able to lock your hands when you need to, and otherwise using like folk style wrestling on top, I think it's like that's the most like underexplored avenue, like even at the elite level in submission grappling right now. And so I feel like if it's underexplored at the elite level, it's probably because you have elite level guys who are grapplers, who used to be wrestlers and high level wrestlers that like went away from it, that started learning jujitsu and then didn't play into what they already knew to be best. So I think that's
No,
when
I think
come
that's
full circle.
well, and as you kind of started talking, like in my head, I was like, oh, hey, I think I know like now the direction I want to like take. And that's a good point with that is I brought this up in like a video I just did on like small unit like squad composition things, but I brought up like specifically like the sport aspect in any sport, football, basketball, wrestling, whatever, which is like everybody who is at the top of a particular sport has to be pretty good at every aspect of that sport, but there is something that they are like the best at or something that they are like fantastic at. And I think that's a really big problem. I mean, we could use some MMA examples, like famous guys, like take like Damian Maia, for example. Like Damian Maia, like absolutely fantastic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy. Not really a great wrestler in terms of pure wrestling, not a great striker in terms of striking. But for a while, he kind of got away from the jiu-jitsu thing and was having some trouble. And then he finally basically got back to where like use some very just good fundamental basic boxing and then just a regular snatch single for a takedown and then went back to doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu to people. And like lo and behold, if you're the best, probably the best like pure jiu-jitsu guy who's ever fought in the UFC, like him, that's a really good way
By
to win
far.
a lot of fights, which is
Yeah.
like, hey, and then, like conversely, like if you're a wrestler, like freaking wrestle, like strike when you need to strike, jiu-jitsu when you need to jiu-jitsu, but like wrestle. And I think, and that's kind of been another, like thing that we combined our 2 points when we were initially talking, so we kind of didn't get to it. But I think that's one thing that you see coming from the professional, like the sport fighting thing that I think is also super relevant to just the regular quote unquote, like street fighting self-defense side of things, which is that like, I don't honestly think that doing jujitsu like in fighting is that good of an idea for the most part, particularly from the bottom, but in a lot of
Completely agree.
ways, because
Completely agree.
it requires so much attachment to the guy that
Yep.
the relative chances of getting in some way like reversed or whatever. Like, for example, I'll use myself again. So 5'10", 230, short and stubby. So when I go with guys, and in particular, like one of my main training partners is our buddy BJ, who's like, well, you guys who follow my Instagram and stuff have seen he's the really large male that is in some of my training videos. And what's Dono, like 6'4", like 320, like
He's shaped like a house.
yeah, he's humongous, And so him and I have been training together a lot, and so I don't like taking his back if I get the opportunity because like all he has to do is if he can roll on his side and then my hook that's in on that side gets a little bit trapped and like kind of pops out, he's basically just one hard, like heister or rolling movement away from in and up on top of me. And he's so large that I can't control him enough in order to like maintain some semblance of top position. So like if I am going with him and I manage to get on top or manage to be working from his turtle or something, I just go strictly wrestling rides. Like, I'll go with like a gut wrench or if I can get wrist controls or something like that. But I'm basically just going 100% regular wrestling ride, and I'll just try to like put him down. And then basically I try to ambush him regarding and see if I can get a pass off that, end up back in, north, south, or side control positions that I like. But for exactly that reason, which is that like, one, there is no part of this that is an advantage for me to end up on the bottom, even when we're just doing regular jujitsu. But also of like, trying to maximize like the benefit out of that, which is like, okay, like one, make the guy work, if I can get him to like push up really hard on his hands to get up and then push him back down and then put him back down a few times, like make him work that way. But also if you can kind of defeat a couple of those really like their first regard attempts, it becomes a lot easier to ambush their regards and then end up in the actual top position that you want to end up. And that's kind of what I shifted to. But I think that applies completely from the sports side of things to like the real life real life fighting side of things, which is like, man, if you get on top, under no circumstances be anywhere but on top, um, and just like, just absolute controls. And then it's particularly in the weapons based environment, I love going to like the turtle and then like a wrist control, or even just like reaching around grabbing the belt, or reaching around grabbing that thigh pry, that spiral ride, because now I get a hand free. I can punch the guy. I could go to a baton. I could go to a taser. I can go to my pistol if I need to go to a pistol. If I want to just push the guy and stand up, and run away, or run back 10 feet, drop my gun and be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? I really don't want to shoot you, but you're being a dick, whatever. Then you kind of have a lot of options from that.
Well, and what I was going to say is, I think the best part about being able to grapple or train in grappling is not the jiu-jitsu. Like, so you're talking about things that are applicable to the real world. I think the thing is most applicable about training in the real world is the chance to be able to go live and to be able to inoculate yourself to that stress. I would say that like your wrestling is going to have way bigger impact on actual domination in the fight. Your hand fighting is going to, that's one of the reasons why you mentioned why you like to do the passing, why you like to do the hand fighting. Shoot, this is the reason why we were doing the passing for the longest time. So I want to know that I wasn't going to walk up against anybody that was going to be able to out hand fight me if I was at the bottom. That if a guy was going to pass my guard, he was going to have to be about as good as they can get, because I was going to spend so much time in that cut, working on transitions and hand fighting from the ground. And so, I worked out really well, but then like that hand fighting carried over to the feet as well. But for the same reason, I mean, to your point earlier, that is where I think you're seeing like the greatest amount of carryover in terms of practical application. But you can't compartmentalize that and say, okay, I'm just going to work on hand fighting. No, you have to have all the live goes. But the parts you take from it the most are the hand fighting and the footwork and the head positioning.
No, for sure. I think, getting some of the, positional spars and the live work in is definitely it's definitely necessary. And I think, and you can kind of, I've not changed. I've sort of softened my opinion on it, I guess, in the last couple of years, which is that like, I mean, I definitely think you got to get in and do some live reps. There's no question, but I kind of tend to like to keep a smaller amount of live reps now relative to like the total amount. And I prefer more like positional related sparring. I think, and I kind of approach the same thing in class, as far as especially trying to like, oh, go ahead.
Do you think that's more because of the period of development you're in terms of your skill, or because you've just gotten older and you know better now?
It's both for sure. I mean, one, I like to try to work on specific things. Whereas obviously if it's too open-ended, it can be difficult to do that sometimes. Even with like newer guys, like I think maybe in some ways, maybe even like a slightly selfish way, it's kind of easier if like I set up, like if the thing that I wanted to do anyways, if I just make that the positional spar, like, hey, I wanted to work with one of the like, the like twitchy wrestler guys from like him having a body lock or whatever. So instead of trying to like make it happen organically so he understands it, I'll just be like, hey, we're just going to start with body lock. So he kind of like gets it like, oh, hey, my job is to try to really clamp down on this thing and pass with it, So I think there's some benefit to that. And then I kind of also like it because kind of what we talked about with like, guys getting too resigned to doing jiu-jitsu. So like I like to, like, one of my favorite things to have us do for positional sparring is I'll basically say, hey, top guy can start in any position he wants, like any dominant position, so not on the guy's guard. And his whole goal, and usually so like you stay on top for the whole 3 minutes, and then you rotate it 3 minutes with your partner and you be on bottom. But then, and your goal is just to stay on top no matter what. If you can finish the guy, you finish the guy, but to stay on top and out of his guard. Conversely, he tries to get back to a guard, or he tries to get to his feet and escape. And I like that, especially with some of our scrappier younger guys, because like, to try to like get them a little bit in like the mindset of like, hey, you standing up to your feet and getting away from me is a perfectly reasonable thing for you to do. Conversely, like I want to work on like not allowing that to happen. So I want to be so crushing positionally that like, that's not something I have to worry about. So yeah, I definitely like it from what, go ahead.
So that's something I want to touch on right there, that I think you lose. I've seen it happen in our room, not to near the degree probably because of the level of wrestling just in the Midwest in general. But I've seen it happen in a lot of rooms. I think a lot of times when you're training in jiu-jitsu, you lose the necessity for the guy on bottom to get up, and so like without trying to sweep. So a guy will just sit there and play guard on you. So it's almost like this. There's this agreed upon. Oh, okay, cool. I'm down. You're gonna try to pass me. I'm gonna try to stop you from passing me. I'm gonna try to sweep you instead of like where the guy on top. Oftentimes, if the guy on bottom doesn't want to be on bottom, like if he got out wrestled to get there, but he doesn't want to stay there, you're going to have to hold him down the whole time while you're trying to pass. And that's a completely different level.
I think that's the hardest
thing
to do in grappling is like to keep a guy down who does not want to be kept down, particularly in no-gi. Well, especially in no-gi because you don't wear freaking wrestling shoes. So like all the dude has to do is get to one of his knees because then he can turn and bail. And it's so hard. Like, because then, I mean, you have to either switch to the double or the body lock like right away. And it's so hard to keep a guy down. No, so I think that's like absolutely relevant. And then kind of back to us talking about like the sport fighting and stuff like that is I think I first heard Ben Askren talk about it like in a podcast and I really liked it. You know, he brought up basically, you know, kind of what we've been talking about a little bit, which is that like so many guys, you know, they'll get taken down and so they'll play jiu-jitsu and they'll get like 75% of a submission 10 times, but they'll never actually like finish a dude or whatever. It's like, all right, bro, you're on bottom the whole time. And even if the guy's just pitter pattering you, like you're not winning a fight in any real definition of it. So is it not a better risk to take to roll over to your belly, immediately go hand control, try to stand up, get away, than it is to basically resign yourself to being on bottom? And I think that's super relevant in like the self-defense side of things. Now we have to keep in mind that like we're also kind of playing like one of the reasons why I would play like a closed guard like self-defense wise would be to try to like control a guy's arms if I think he has weapons, or if I have weapons I don't want him to like grab. You know, but conversely, like it's probably worth my risk to try to make space and stand up versus like, you know, even if you get a dude in like really lashed down like closed guard, like what's your end game from there? You know, is it like yell loud enough that somebody calls the cops? You know, what if the guy just, you know, picks you up and slams you out of clothes? You know, it's like, okay, that's definitely a good way to mitigate getting your face busted in and to buy yourself, or maybe you just got knocked out, you know, knocked down on the ground or whatever, you know, like, okay, buy yourself some time to clear the cobwebs. That's cool. But it's like, what is your end game by going to that closed guard defensively? You know, so kind of thinking from that standpoint, I think. But okay, so I had one more point I wanted us to kind of talk about, and we're kind of running over an hour here, so we'll try to knock this one out somewhat quickly. So the last one was, what are some core principles or standards you think, I'm just going to start that over. What are some core principles or standards you think should apply to the real life application of grappling? I'll let you go ahead.
Can you give me a little more, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so like, let's just even say, what are like three absolutes that you would say to like a day one person in a self-defense class, or like if you were trying to teach my class, or if you're trying to help teach my class that I teach, you know, my combative handgun solutions class, like what are like, I'm just making up a number, but what are like three things that you would be like, hey, these are absolutes when it comes to the real life application of grappling?
Well, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have said underhooks. But man, underhooks are not always a great solution for guys who are significantly undersized compared to the competition. So it's one of those things.
It's a good way to get really close to a person that you don't want to be really close to.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought of that if I weren't in a spot where like I've been always the same height or taller than my competition. So man, I definitely think that if it comes to doing fighting, and by doing fighting, I don't mean running away or trying to get to a place where you can leave. I mean getting to a place where, hey, I want to do fighting with this guy, and I want to be able to stand my ground, or I want to be able to be effective and win in this situation. Like I don't have a solution, I don't have an opportunity to leave for whatever reason. Like I'm defending my family or a friend, or this is my fucking home, or whatever it is. Like inside head position, inside hand position, and knowing where your grips are at all times. Like, I think like the first two are easy to teach but hard to master, and the third one only comes through volume. Because you'll find better grips as you go throughout your career, and you'll find that like, oh man, like some grips work really well. Case in point, like the beanbag grip happens to be a very effective grip. I had guys give me a hard time for it before, but you know what? I've had to use it a couple of times in my life, and it was incredibly effective, even for a person who has relatively weak grips like myself.
Oh, absolutely. That was we had a specific name for what I used when I was bouncing in college. We called it the Texas T handle, which was yeah, I don't know where that came from, but so guys who grapple know, like, especially if you're like, underhook or coming up on the claw, like on the feet, just reaching up, basically grabbing like dude's butthole, picking up to return. It's like totally normal. But I basically just take a step further to your point, and I would just instead of like grabbing for his butthole, I just reach through and I would just grab his dick and balls, and then squeeze. Because one thing I found with that is that one, you're really deep on the hips, you have a lot of leverage, but also like anytime you grab that, like a dude takes both of his hands down there immediately to try to get rid of your hand. So like defensively, like the first thing to hit the ground is his shoulder and face. Like, yeah. So like that's absolutely for sure.
I think another thing is like anything you want to be good at, you have to train often. Something I heard Jocko say once that I thought was really, man, like I was really underappreciated for how true it was, well, I have enough time to get good. And it's like, well, are you like, you have no idea when this is coming. If you're trained to be effective in the real world, you have a job, you have a family, you have all these things going on, and this isn't like you're not like, oh man, I want to be really good at jiu-jitsu. I want to be really good defending myself and my family if I have to. Well, then you don't have to do it by tomorrow, but you do have to do it, and you do have to train. So training so that you know what weapons are available to you. I remember, I'll never forget this. I haze my brother with this at least once a year whenever we're talking about like combat. I remember one time I took my brother out to a bar, and my brother wasn't quite old enough yet, so he was supposed to be on his best behavior. And I'm talking to a guy who's a friend of mine in the bar, and he's like, "Isn't that your brother out there?" And I turn around as I see my brother, who is taller than me and taller than this guy by a significant margin, decide to do a jumping, spinning elbow to this dude, and the dude just like steps out of the way. Jake spins and falls onto the ground, and then the guy just kind of shrugs, takes a step over, so he's straddling my brother, and then just starts like dropping hammers on Jake's dome. And I had to run across the street and like jump to a rear naked on this guy and put him like, out like that. And I mean, my brother's severely inebriated. We still laugh about it, but knowing what's available to you at all times to use, like that was not the thing that was available to you, Jake. You're tall, you're strong as heck. Like even with very little knowledge, you could be very effective in a fight. But that wouldn't be the weapon to use. So I think that comes just through volume and training. I think the last
and then
thing,
it's like, and it's, I mean, I kind of talk about the same thing when it comes to like shooting and training and stuff like that. It's like, are you going to get worse than you are today? And if not, then
right.
Isn't it, I mean, no, and it's kind of a principle that I've sort of changed with myself, like training wise, which is like any amount of positive training that I can do today, no matter how minimal, is better than not doing it.
Right.
I think, and I run into this with, like, this is kind of getting out of your realm, but I run into this with people all the time when it comes to pistol stuff, and especially dry fire. It's like most people, like, especially if they're kind of like starting to like, want to dry fire or starting to get in competition shooting, which, for, guys who are more, jujitsu focused, like dry fires, firing, or it's practicing with the gun where we're not actually firing live rounds, but it's what comprises the majority of your training for the most really good shooters. And so, they'll do what everybody does when it comes to starting some sort of new training thing. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to do 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. You're like, no, you're not. Like, first of all, if you do, you're going to burn out in like a week, but also like, it's unnecessary. And like, I have this conversation with like multiple guys at work, which is, I'm like, dude, find a way to do 10 minutes of dry fire a week. Like, your whole fucking life would change in a year if you did 10 minutes of dedicated dry fire every week. And like you have 10, I mean, I waste more than 10 minutes a day pooping at work before I go open the front desk at the place that I work at. Like, it's like you have time to do that. But it's like people will make these like arbitrary, like, I don't know, like arbitrary like times or distances or like, amounts of investment that they have to make to get some sort of positive ROI. And I'm like, if your current investment is zero, any amount of dry firing it's, it's immeasurably better than that. Same thing with like fighting, jiu-jitsu, whatever. It's like if your current amount of annual grappling is zero, 5 minutes is better. So, however you want to think of it is like doing something is better. Um, and
Well,
yeah, like trying to get people to kind of just like wrap their brain around like that simple concept. But
and sort of to that point, let me touch on that a little bit. I try to tell guys, I think I've told almost everybody I know that if I had the opportunity, like if I could just have somebody hand fight or do the passing drill with me an hour a day, I would do that in a heartbeat. It is impossible to find a person like jiu-jitsu is a sport where it takes two people to do most of the things you want to do. And it's like, so some of the monotonous drills, like they're so fundamentally important. And like, once you get to a certain point, you see it, and then it's like, oh, I'm absolutely going to do this. And so then after you get over that initial hump, it's just building a habit and doing it. You know what I mean? Like, or then
no,
on
I think
top of
that's a
that,
good point. And I actually was thinking about this, well, today, and I was thinking about it last night. So my knee's kind of tweaked up right now. So I kind of retore my meniscus, which doesn't really hurt, but like guys who have done that before. So like the little flap is kind of up in my knee. So it's like keeping me from
mhm.
bending it very well. So at jiu-jitsu, I've just been basically going like hand fighting real hard. And so I had one of our blue belts hand fighting with me last night. Tall guy,
Who was
like
it?
like John's height. What's that?
Who was it?
Oh, handsome Sean. Um,
Oh, yeah, he's
but
handsome.
he's thicked up a little bit. Like he's been
Yeah.
eating his Wheaties and stuff. So but no, and we had a really good like good time with it. And one thing I noticed I became conscious of like while I was in the middle of it is that so he's like John's size. So he's like 6'3" or 6'4". He's like 230. So he's like my weight, but like significantly taller and longer. And I like hand control, wrist control, and I'm an arm dragger. Like that's my jam. So I kept trying to really push that. He was doing a really good job of keeping me off. Like he's keeping his hands really active. Wasn't attacking me a whole lot, but he was really like just really stifling with his hands. And so like one thing that I noticed that like I kind of liked about it was because obviously like the difference between being on the feet versus like being like already like an engaged guard of some sort is that like I was able to disconnect, and then I made like the conscious choice. I was like, hey, I'm gonna shift into something different. I was like, hey, I'm gonna shift into my underhook stuff. So I was like, bam, immediately attack underhook. Okay, all right, bam. Started having success with that like right away. Um, but I kind of like that because I had a chance to like actually like think about it and like have to be like, all right, I'm not having any success. Plus we're like, crazy sweaty at the time, so I wasn't able to like, get any good grips on anything, and so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to like getting I love going wrist control to the 2-on-1 or going arm drag, and I wasn't able to make any of that stuff happen. He's doing a really good job of just like stifling, really fighting hard, swatting the hands and staying away with that stuff. So it's like, all right, you're gonna have to like, bang on his head, go underhook, work on that, but it's like able to like kind of make adjustments on the fly. And I was thinking about that kind of like all today. I was like, man, we had like a really good, and we did it for like the whole, like that person. So we did like 6.5 minutes of that, like straight. So it was really, my chest is actually sore from
That's
like
pretty
pushing
intense.
and checking so much. But like, no, but it's good. I had a good time with that yesterday.
It's interesting. I said the part I was gonna say on top of that was, but make a slight segue and say, dude, handsome Sean has gotten so freaking good in the last couple months. I can't believe it. It's like ever since he said he was going to do the ADCC Open, like that kid has been. I think it was either Monday or Tuesday. I was going in the bottom with him, and I'm still kind of a little banged up, so I haven't been able to. So I'm like, okay. And he was coming like he was trying, like it was the ADCC Open already. Like, hey man, I need to play on top. And so I get on top, and I'm just like working the stuff I'm doing currently, and just I am I'm getting kind of rough with him. He's getting rough right back, which is fun. So we're going, and then I'm just like, um, I'm really not being a good training partner, and I'm just trying to see like if this kid's gonna quit. Because most people like, if you're just dominating the top game and everything they try to do, you're shutting down, and it's supposed to happen. I mean, like black belt and blue belt, they'll quit. And I was like, I was waiting for Sean to be like, okay, cool. And dude, we did it for like 35 minutes, and he just kept coming. And I was like, man, you know what? Like, I told him, but dude, like that kid is so freaking mentally tough that like I backed off trying to reset one time, and he just charged up on this underhook, and we're fighting for our lives again. And I'm like, man, dude, like, you don't see that often where guys are just going to keep coming, even if they're like, and I have a chance. Like we were talking about how like you're just dominated positionally and everything you do, you're still dominated. And then the one opportunity he finds, he was right back in on it. And I was like, man, dude, that mental toughness is something that you don't often see in guys from like, beginners up to an elite level. But I mean, that mental toughness will take you a long way in its own right. And he's good. And he's got a very outlier body type. So I was just really excited. I can't wait to see how he performs in September.
No, that's good. And I was going to mention the same thing. I was like, because we like, both him and I, but also Eunice is like he has a prototype jujitsu body
Mhm.
type, especially like if he
Yeah.
competes like IBJJF, like 215 and under, like super heavyweight,
Yeah.
being like 6'4" with like long limbs as like a 215 and under guy, like that, like dimensionally, like fantastic for that. No, especially in Nogi, for sure. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so kind of to kind of like get us back on track so we can
hold on. Like,
yes.
the one thing I was going to say to you before I had to cut off with Sean was, when you talk about, like, oftentimes guys will say, okay, I'm going to start the dry fire routine, or I'm going to start, doing X, or I'm going to start doing Y. One of the things that I've heard guys say often, and it sucks because, like, I don't know that unless you train, you ever get the perspective. But I've heard so many guys like that have said to me, man, like, I'd love to come training, but I really just, and I've been straight up with me and said, I just, don't want everybody else to know that I don't know as much as, like, I'd like to know, or that I'm not as good as, like, as I'd like to be, or I'd like people to think I am. And, I know I always sound kind of like a dick when I say it. But like, I've probably told guys several times that, man, no offense, but to everybody that train, we already know. Like, we know who all the tough guys are because they train. And once you start training, like, once you, like, I mean, I'm assuming it's the exact same as shooting. Like, you already know who all the good shooters are because they're the ones who are shooting and training. And if you're not, then you know how difficult it is to be good. And so if that person isn't, then they're not going to be. It's like the chick who thinks that she's going to add 20 pounds of muscles because she starts lifting with bands. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
if you're actually trying to stack muscle, you know how hard it is. And, that shit isn't coming just because you're starting to work out with bands, honey. So,
yeah, no, it definitely is.
You got to get over that.
With that. And just, there's something to be said for just like, because we have like, I mean, we have a lot of like new people in the gym, which we normally don't have new people. And like, and this is something like I brought up before specifically, which is that like, I think one of the problems that we've had as a gym in the past is that like we weed too many people out before, because like some dudes know they're tough. Like they come in tough, they know they're tough. They've been wrestlers before or whatever. But like some dudes don't know they're tough yet, and like you don't know they're tough yet, but like they are. And so like you have to keep them around long enough that like you can discover that, because there's some dudes that like don't look like it, and they're like one of our new white belts is like that, like really really like quiet, like unassuming guy. I mean, he's not like particularly flexible or like big or anything, but it's funny because like the only time I ever really notice it is like the days when I'll teach class. I usually like do a submission of some sort, and like everyone who pairs with this guy can never finish him in any of the submissions. Usually it's like another white belt or like a blue belt or whatever. So like I mean obviously there's a little bit of like technical discrepancies with things they're doing, but it's like, I'm trying to think. Like I taught one of my really mean finishes to like a head and arm or something like a while back, and I'm trying to think of who was going with him. I think it's one of our blue belts, but and just like could not like finish him. Like, and we're just drilling, so I'm like, hey, bottom guy, like give him feedback. Like if it's don't tap if it's not there, or whatever. And like whoever it was, like literally couldn't finish this guy, and he was like, torqued way over. And I was like, okay, maybe this, maybe this guy's maybe this guy's kind of tough. But all right, I'm gonna bring us back on track here before we you be quiet. All right, so we rambled off of the track there. So kind of back. So the point I wanted to finish on was like, kind of, some core principles to, to apply, like grappling to like the self-defense situations, which will kind of be the last little point. And so obviously, so John introduced him. So if I was going to like introduce mine, mine would be pretty simple, which would be like one, active hands, active feet. Even if you don't know what they're doing with them, if you have both your feet moving and both your hands moving, you can be awfully difficult to not only control, but awfully difficult to hit, both punching and when you talk about weapons and knives and things. like that. So active hands, active feet, constantly circling, and if you're on the bottom, be not on the bottom. Like, yeah, like you're talking about like real life, whatever. You find yourself on the ground, find a way to be not on the ground. So active hands and active feet, constantly circling. No matter what position you're in, circling is the correct answer to it. Unbelievably foundational concept. And then if you find yourself on the ground, be not on the ground. That's my if I'm going to break my core principles down into three things. And realistically, if I break it down into one thing, it's active hands, active feet. If you don't have any freaking clue what you're doing, move both your feet at the same time and move both your hands around at the same time. It'll be awfully like annoyingly difficult to deal with. Like you probably, if you have like a freaking toddler or whatever, like give them a marker and tell them to just swing it in the air and then like try to fight with them. Like you'll get the shit marked out of you, you know? But okay, so we're coming right up on the 90-minute mark, which is kind of what I set as our limit. So I'll say thanks to John, and if there's anything you would like to say in parting, I will let you, and then I will sign us off.
Well, I'm going to bring back something that
you're not going to talk more, are you? We're like already at the 90-minute mark, John.
You told me I had to have something to sign off with.
I said you could like something to part company with.
A while back, we had a guy come into the gym, and he's still here. So this is why it's good. And I was giving the spiel. I was like, yeah, this is a tough gym. We train hard. If this isn't for you, I can tell you there are other places, because I guarantee you it's not jiu-jitsu, it's us. So if you want to go someplace else, go someplace else. He's like, what do you mean it's a tough gym? I'm like, it's for like guys, that train here are tough, and we train really hard. And like he's with a friend, and his friend like is looking at like stuff on the wall or whatever, and he just says kind of quietly, he's like, what if you're not tough but you want to be? And I was like, oh dude, just keep showing up and you'll be playing tough. And now the guy is an absolute freaking hammer. And I guess the reason so my end point is that, dude, if you ever have the mind that, hey, I would just like to be tough, or I'd like to be good at any of this, just start showing up. You'd be surprised how good you get, and you'd be infinitely better than if you never did.
No, for sure. I think that's good. But that's all I've got. Thanks for listening, guys. But remember, only the hits count, and you can never miss fast enough to catch back up.
Thanks for having me on, Lane.
Did you just speak after I did my fucking sign off?
Oh, is that how that goes? Sorry, I was just saying thank you for having me on.
Fuck's sake. All right. We're going to try this again. And John is not going to speak after the end of it. Remember, guys, only the hits count, and you can never miss fast enough to catch back up. Swear to God, you're fucking worthless.
Are you still recording?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.